is Jill Berry Bowen, CEO of Northwestern Medical Center, and your host of the NMC Health Beat Show, dedicated to discussing important healthcare topics of interest to our community. Today, I'm joined by our Director of Facilities, Tyson Moulton. And you've seen him a lot, I know, but we're going to be talking about renovations of the NMC's emergency department. And Tyson will reintroduce himself, but prior to him doing that, the reason for this conversation that we're having is because not only at Northwestern Medical Center, but also at other Vermont hospitals, we are really working hard to get it right in the care of our patients with mental illness. It's challenging and it's complex, but we want the best care for everyone, and it often starts in our emergency department. So Tyson's here with us today, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that is happening in the emergency department to make sure that we are providing the best care, safe for our patients and for our staff. So Tyson, welcome.
Yeah,
thanks for being with us. Again, I know a lot happens to be around facilities, but you oversee security. You really have a great organization that you're working with that really provides for facilities and infrastructure. So appreciate you being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So just remind everybody who you are, a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into the topic.
So I'm Tyson Moulton. I'm the Director of Facilities. I've been with the company with Northwestern for about 5 years. I oversee facilities, which is kind of the maintenance as well as construction, and as you mentioned, I oversee security and safety as well. And those are really the topics that are dovetailing together today, so that to address the issues in the emergency department.
Great. So tell us a little bit about what's happening, what you're working on right now in the emergency department.
So we're working on a number of different things kind of across facilities and security to try to improve safety in the emergency department for patients, both those that you mentioned that might be in a mental health crisis, or other patients that are in the emergency department,
Sure.
as well as the staff that are caring for those patients. As you mentioned, we've seen we've had challenges with mental health treatment in general in the state, as well as, these are issues that are nationwide.
Right.
And it's creating new challenges in the emergency department. Now, really, our goals are to make sure that we're creating a safe environment to treat our community, to care for our community. And so we've been working on a number of things to specifically around people who might be in mental health crisis when they're presenting in our emergency department. And those things, we start really with our staff, and how are our staff trained to help those people, to de-escalate any situation that might be potentially violent or harmful. And so we've really ramped up our training. We use a system called MANT, which really focuses on meeting patients where they are, trying to understand the context of the situation, and focuses on verbally de-escalating situations that might get tense, understanding the crisis cycle, and then also has some hands-on components, safe ways in case somebody does start to have violent actions, and so that we can help to restrain them safely. So that's part of it. We've also trained a smaller group of staff to respond to situations that may be already escalated to a violent state. So additional training to be able to manage that patient in a safe way and get them back under control. So those are kind of some of the training and more operational items that we've been working on to improve the safety of the environment. The other is we're looking at creating a safer environment. If you look in a standard emergency department room, there's a lot of things in that room that could potentially be harmful or could be, quote unquote, weaponized. And so we're looking in the near future to be building a safe room.
Oh, what's that?
So a safe room is basically a room that removes the opportunity for harm, or as much as possible. So it's a room where if somebody comes in and maybe they are having, are talking about self-harm or talking about harming others, we can put them in an environment that is safer for them, where we're removing anything that could be potentially turned into a weapon or be harmful to them. We talk about this as an anti-ligature room, which is kind of the technical term, but basically we're trying to create that safe environment where this person can be cared for.
So it's basically taking as much as possible out of the room.
Yeah.
So there's nothing on the walls, or is there a TV in there?
Yeah, there's especially with the current situations with mental health, where sometimes these people who are having mental health crisis might come into our emergency department and they may be with us for a few days, sometimes a few weeks, and so we need to make sure that we're again creating that environment where they're not just sitting in an empty room alone, because that's not helpful for anybody. So yes, there will be a TV in the room. We also have other strategies that we use to try to keep people occupied, right? It's about creating a good healing environment for that person.
Sure. But reducing the stimulation.
Yes.
Because the ED is pretty busy.
Yes.
So there must be a lot of, in the environment that could just really be be agitating.
That's another challenge that we have, is because the emergency department is such a busy place. These rooms are right off of the main hallway, right across the hall from another room.
Right.
So it not only is it disruptive to the person who, with mental illness or in a mental health crisis,
right.
That person getting loud could also be disruptive to the other patient. So one of the aspects of this room is we're creating like a vestibule room. So there's a little bit more separation. We're also going to soundproof as well as we can this room, so that anything that's occurring in that room isn't having as much impact on the rest of the emergency department, and vice versa. Other things that are happening in the emergency department are not kind of spilling into this room.
Mm-hmm. Is that something that you're doing soon, this room that we were talking about?
Yeah, we hope to have it up and running by the end of February.
Okay. So in the meantime, what are we doing to make sure that these rooms are safe, or as safe as possible?
In the meantime, we've taken one of our emergency department rooms and really kind of stripped it of everything that we can. It's not currently it's not an ideal situation, but it's a far better situation than a standard room. What we also do is when we have a patient that comes in need of this kind of room, is those people they're going to be under one-on-one observation. So we're going to have somebody with them at all times, just to make sure that they're not harming themselves, that they're not doing something else that's disruptive, as well as to start to identify those cues. If that person is starting to escalate, there might be something that person can do to de-escalate them. Maybe they're just thirsty. Maybe they just need a drink. Maybe they need some information and they're agitated because they don't know what's going on. And that person can start to identify those things and have the potential of de-escalating it before it turns into a larger issue.
Oh, that's great. What role does security play? Any changes with security, or what role do they play in this?
Security plays a large role in this. Oftentimes they are the ones who are doing these one-on-one observations, although we're training more staff to be that role. But they're often the ones in that in there, and they're really there to step in when things do escalate. We've increased their presence in the emergency department, making sure that when they're not engaged in something else, they're in the emergency department as a presence. Sometimes that can de-escalate situations. They can respond quicker as well.
Sure.
They've also gotten some additional training in the recent future, or in the recent past, about how to safely go hands-on. Obviously we don't want those situations,
right.
and we train, and all of our security staff has had that MANT training, so they're trained in verbal de-escalation, and that's always our goal, is to verbally de-escalate situations, but we also have to be prepared for those cases where we're not going to be able to do that.
Right. So do you do drills, or how do you prepare folks for this? Because I'm hoping it doesn't happen all so much that you don't need the training, but every situation must be different. So how do you prepare for something like this?
Yeah, we're lucky enough to have an excellent coordinator in the security department who is running drills almost on a weekly basis, unannounced drills where we have this specially trained team that comes and responds to something. And we'll usually have an actor there, and we'll act through a few different scenarios, scenarios where we're going to have to engage physically with that individual, and then situations where we're going to verbally de-escalate. And so that we're starting to get into that groove. Like you said, hopefully this is not something that happens often enough that it's old hat. But we want that resource to be a well-oiled machine when they do have to respond.
Absolutely.
And also training all the staff in verbal de-escalation is another tool so that we hopefully don't have to call these as often as possible.
Great. Wow. A lot of preparation, a lot of work, a lot of training and education, and that's terrific. So what about longer term? Any plans for the emergency department longer term?
Yeah, this is obviously a kind of a short-term measure. In the future, we have plans for a full emergency department renovation. We're in the process of putting together the certificate of need application. This is a project that's large enough that it has to go to the Green Mountain Care Board to be reviewed.
Okay.
And we have a schematic design completed. And so this is really going to be a complete renovation, the first complete renovation that we've had in a while in the emergency department. And we're looking at addressing, an area for behavioral health patients in general on a larger scale than what we're doing. We're going to have 2 of these rooms, these safe rooms, have it in an area where there's a separate nurses station, a little bit more secluded, and some other attributes. Access to daylight. That's one thing that for people that are going to be there for a little while, being able to understand what time of day it is really important, and just fully separated space.
So what's the timeline on that?
A lot of the timeline really depends on how quickly the Green Mountain Care Board is able to assess our project and ultimately approve it, as well as there's other permitting that we'll have to go through. But we're really looking at sometime to middle to late 2020 for completion of that.
Middle to late 2020. I can't even imagine that when you totally renovate an emergency department, that means from the front door to all the workings. I mean, the staging of that must be complicated, and you have to educate the community. I mean, that seems to be a little overwhelming sitting in my seat. In your seat, I'm sure you just do this in your sleep. But
no, it's going to be a logistically challenging project. We looked early on about how do we phase this so that we can keep the emergency department open. And we really looked, that was a really complicated and going to be very time consuming. We have a great opportunity at Northwestern in that when we did the addition to our inpatient unit, our old ICU was vacated and is available space. Right now we're using it for education and as a simulation lab, but that's a space that's already designed for clinical patients. So we're going to be using that as the emergency department while we do a full renovation of the existing emergency department.
Wow.
Yeah. When we looked at it, we're renovating registration and the waiting room, and for anyone who's been to the emergency department, there's no way in other than that. So we kind of had to look at other options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So this must be exciting for you with your role. I mean, when you think about, you've been here for 5 years, you said, and there's been a lot accomplished with our infrastructure in the past 5 years. So you've done a lot of work and overseeing, and it's probably fun for you in your profession, but it's complicated and greatly appreciated. So.
Yeah, no, it's been lots of logistical issues, but no, it's been that's what's fun about it is making sure that we can make these improvements so that we can better care for our community, but then also making sure that we're able to provide those services while we're making those improvements, which is oftentimes more complicated than actually doing the renovations.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I can only tell you that, our time is up, but you'll be back again because you are kind of leading so many initiatives, and it's been really remarkable. We're lucky to have you at Northwestern Medical Center, and the fact that we've got this major renovation and it will further improve care and access for all of our patients is really remarkable. So thank you very much for leading the organization in this way and bringing us to a better place.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jill.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Well, I'm Jill Berry Bowen, your host of Healthbeat today, and we've learned about how safety is such a priority, not only in our emergency department, but everywhere, but particularly today was about our emergency department, making sure the care of our mentally ill patients have exceptional care along with everybody else, and everybody is safe while we're providing that care. So thank you for joining us today.